Right, hello. I'm Mike Scott-Hayward. I'm standing as an independent candidate this time in North East Fife. It's actually the sixth general election I'm standing for. Previously, I've stood in this constituency twice for the Conservatives. I stood elsewhere for them twice before that, and also stood for UKIP as well. Throughout my time in politics, what I've actually been concerned about is basically national sovereignty, not just British sovereignty, but national sovereignty, because I think that most nations, the nation state evolved fairly naturally, sometimes with conflict, but naturally, whereas something like the European Union is actually being pushed and driven by people with a big ideology and a dream that I don't think necessarily can work, and by bureaucrats. And it's too large an organisation for people who are used to being in a nation state to identify with. It's different to the American situation. And the reality of what's happening in Europe doesn't suit me. I think Napoleon mocked us and called us a nation of shopkeepers. And we are different. We behave differently to the European Union. And I think that we should be governed by the people we elect and not by what I call a foreign collective, unelected bureaucratic power. So that's my bottom line.
So this is your fourth time standing for the North East Fife seat. Right. What is it that keeps you coming back?
Well, it's my home. This is where I've been based, as I said, for 47 years. Now, the first 17 of those I was coming and going in the army, but this was home. Since leaving the army, I've been here, based here all the time in the same house. I served as a councillor. As soon as I came out of the army, they suggested that I have a go at the council. I didn't want to because I wanted to go straight to the parliamentary level, but I thought, well, I'll see what it's like on the doorstep. And against the odds, they were just looking for somebody to hold the flag. They thought the Liberals would keep the seat that I was standing for, but I won. And obviously, that taught me a lot about politics. And there's two spheres of politics. There's the individual helping your constituent, which is the bit that I really do like. People come to you with a problem, you talk it through with them. If they're wrong, you tell them. If they're right, you fight for them. And I would continue to do that as an MP with different issues. And the other aspect is influencing policy and making the decisions that affect the whole community. So I enjoy that. But I think the bigger issues are national issues. And with my army experience as well, I'm particularly concerned about defence and international affairs.
As you said, two of your attempts were Conservative, and then you stood for UKIP, and now you are independent. Can you explain that process a little bit more, like how that came to be?
There is no party that has the policy for which I wish to vote. That is, a new relationship or different relationship or exit from Europe. Strong defence. I can't believe the Conservatives have decimated the military the way they have. The only thing to say about David Cameron there is at least he's keeping Trident, which is still essential for the time being. And on other things, obviously the economy is fine. But I can't subscribe to this, we'll go along and chat to Mr. Juncker and everything will be fine, because Mr. Juncker has said he's not talking. That's unrealistic. So Mike Scott-Hayward will be voting for what he wants at this election, because Mike Scott-Hayward's standing on that platform. I think there's a lot of other people, they're Conservatives, and actually some Liberals as well, who think that way. And I would suggest they don't be tempted to vote tactically or stick to broken loyalties, parties that have compromised and broken promises. For once in your life, vote for what you want, rather than voting for something you don't want and get something else.
It's fair to say that the playing field is much more open now, but it is still a system that favors party politics and tactical voting, as you've been saying. So what do you think you can offer as an independent candidate?
The Public Political Parties Elections and Referendums Act came about because of the need for PR for the Scottish Parliament, because you can't have PR between individuals very easily, so you had to list parties. And then to stop the confusion of calling yourself a literal Democrat and people who can't read voting for you instead of the Liberals, they actually formalised it. And as I said earlier, it means I can only be an independent unless I form my own party. I have done that, but it was 2 hours too late for me when I put my nomination in, so I'm independent. We are now, it's Party matters before people, and I think people matter before party, and that's partly why I'm doing this. I will put the constituency and the country before party or anything else. That's my principle. I will serve without fear or favour. I'm not going to be told by a whip what to do. It's going to be difficult because I will have to read everything. I'll have to understand anything and make my own mind up. Half of these people are just going to go in there and say, which lobby am I going through today? Okay, yes, sir. 3 bags full, sir. That's not serving the people. That's not British or the way it used to be. And I don't think it's fair.
So we've recently held student elections here in St. Andrews. And one of the big issues here was the lack of local affordable accommodation here for students. Do you think there's a solution to that?
Not an easy one. I mean, the biggest point of aggravation is HMO licensing, and I was on those policies. I remember one case down Kinnesburn where I was the only person to support granting an HMO license. I don't think we need that system, but as it's there, granted. All the objections came forward on the basis that students are terrible people. They're not. They're the same as the rest of us, and they're entitled to accommodation. And why should there be these stupid rules? Why should there be extra, kitchen units and stuff? They're still like the rest of us. Anyway, that was turned down by the council on the basis that the students who weren't suitable people. Fortunately, went to the Sheriff's Court and it was overturned, and that license went through. So the first thing we could do practically is those restrictions on the free market of accommodation should go. And now there is the concern, obviously, that you might get a street full of students and that changes the nature. And I did try and get a system where the council, not using a bureaucratic rule and a little tick box and saying if the value of the house is X, then this is what you do, or if it's 12 yards from the first lamppost, you do something else. It was a case of the councillors to use their discretion. And as they do when I was the first to council, you say, right, common sense tells us that this street is actually filling up with too many students. So if there's a licensing system, it should be that discretion which is applied by councillors. And if the weight of public response to their decisions is that they are making the wrong decisions, they don't get elected the next time around. As it is, they can now hide behind tick boxes and bureaucracy, and we don't necessarily get the right answer.
So another key issue, of course, is tuition fees. As you know, Scottish and EU students don't pay anything, and people from the rest of the UK pay £9,000. Do you think that's fair?
No, of course it's not fair. And it's also ridiculous. It's buying votes, the SNP buying votes, basically. It is unrealistic. The two aspects are unrealistic. It's unrealistic to think that students shouldn't make a contribution to tertiary education. I think secondary education, is basically free, although I'd like to rig that slightly as well. But I think it's fair enough for you to make a contribution. Now, whether that contribution is made by you being fortunate enough that your parents can afford it. And if they can afford it, why shouldn't they? Why should the state? Why should somebody else pay for their kids to do it? Because the selection process of getting into university is not based on how much money your daddy got, but based on your academic abilities. The second question is that, well, if daddy can afford it, that's great. But if he can't, then obviously the loan option is there, and the loan option should be, a student loan, low payback rate, and also even the qualified payback rate when you can afford it, because that's the state investing in the product from the university, and it's fair enough. So why is it that we don't encourage bursaries from industry? Shell can afford bursaries, and that way you would actually get more of a match of the universities being paid by industry for the requirements that industry needs to make the country and the economy grow. There is a tendency for people, it's a freebie, I'll take something nice and easy to do. They often go to the arts. That's not to decry the arts, because art's important as well. So the question then comes up, what do you do about the arts if it's all down to bursaries? So there's still room for the state to be able to say, yes, we need people in the arts, so there'll be a pot for state bursaries for art. But again, not just handed willy-nilly because you come here from the EU or not because you come from England. It should be on the basis of if you got the place and you deserve the chance, then do it.
Finally, how are you approaching your campaign? What's your sort of strategy?
Relaxed and quite laid back. I mean, the reality is I have no resources. I actually had to have a little argument with my wife about, you're not going to be spending money on politics again. The last time we had this argument, she didn't want me to do it, and I said, well, I'm going to win. And I just knew I was going to win, and that was the by-election in St Monius Pittenweem and Neely. And but of course the budget there is limited to £200, so I got away with it. This time, I've had to go along to use my credit card, which I've stopped using because I'm, my limited income at the moment, just on pensions and etc. So that was to pay the deposit, £500. But to get my wife on side, I said, okay, I won't spend a penny. That isn't donated to me. I've had one donation because everybody assumes because I wear a jacket and tie rather than a t-shirt that I've got money. But I don't. Nobody has received a single leaflet from me. There are no posters. You can download one off my website, print it off for your own use if you wish, and my manifesto is there as well. We'll have to rely on itself to get the right answer this time. I'm not paying to send them leaflets.
Thank you.